So far we've talked about techniques involving slabs, and almost everyone is going to use flat pieces in some way or another in their sculpture, whether it be just the base that the thing is sitting on, or a backdrop that you're creating, or an element of your actual piece where you're cutting out various shapes and sticking them together. You can do an awful lot with just flat pieces, but of course you're not restricted to flat pieces. So now we're going to look at ways of getting more involved shapes, more three-dimensional forms. Once you get involved in this project, you'll start looking at the everyday stuff around you and start thinking in terms of using it as chocolate molds. And a huge number of things that were never intended to be chocolate molds can be used as molds. Most cheap plastic containers that you have lying around, Tupperware containers, or pieces of packaging. I don't even remember what this was. This was some part of a carry-out container or something at some point. All of these things work marvelously well as chocolate molds. There are a couple of things that you have to look out for that would make something unsuitable for use as a mold. This, for instance, would be a perfect mold. There's absolutely no reason that I couldn't mold chocolate in here, create a chocolate shell in here, and then unmold it, and I'd have exactly this shape. The things that would keep something from being used as a chocolate mold would be, for instance, if instead of this nice open shape, if at some point this shape curved back in on itself, then I would never be able to get a chocolate piece out of there. I could create the shell inside, but I'd never be able to get it out because it would be trapped in there. So you would have to look out for any element in it that created a bottleneck that would keep you from getting a piece out. Some pieces have, for instance, down here at the bottom, would actually have a piece sticking up into the mold, some projection that comes up into the mold. This one has a very, very slight lip that projects up from the bottom, not enough to create a problem. But if this were more pronounced, what would happen would be, if I tried to use it as a chocolate mold, the chocolate, when it shrinks, would grab onto that piece sticking up from the bottom and would refuse to let go, and I would again not be able to get the chocolate piece out, because in contracting the chocolate would squeeze onto that and not let go of it. This is shallow enough that I really don't have to worry about it, and this mold is flexible enough that I can sort of work around potential problems like that. So there are many things in your environment already that if you're trying to get a particular shape, you can use. Keep in mind that you cannot ever use the outside of a form as a chocolate mold. I would never be able to, say, dip this in chocolate or otherwise coat it with chocolate and then get that chocolate off of there. Because again, the chocolate contracts, and so if I put chocolate on the outside of this, it's just going to squeeze hard as it sets, and I'll never be able to get this out. So you always have to use the inside of a form and not the outside. The one exception to that rule is that you can use a balloon as a form. You can dip the balloon into chocolate, and you can even go past this point to where it narrows. And the reason you can get away with that, of course, is because you can then deflate the balloon and leave only the chocolate shell. So you're actually allowing the balloon to shrink away from the chocolate as opposed to allowing the chocolate to shrink away from the mold. So that's a possibility. In fact, why don't we go ahead and do one of those so you can see how that works. The problem is, once we dip this into chocolate, we don't want to just have to sit there and hold the balloon while the chocolate sets. We need some way to set the balloon aside. We can't put it on anything either, because that would be the wet chocolate, and we would create a flat spot there on that on our mold, which we might not necessarily want. So we need some way of suspending this. An easy way I found is to actually use a little tab of Velcro. So I carry some Velcro in my toolkit, and I have it available for anyone who wants to use it. And basically all you have to do is take a little tab of Velcro, attach it up here where the stem of the balloon is, and then in these shelves above our work tables, from generations of classes past, you'll find occasionally little tabs of Velcro that people have used before. That's the opposite kind. This is the loop part of the Velcro, and I look under here and I see that there's a tab of hook Velcro. So now after I dip my balloon, all I have to do is reach under here, attach it to that hook Velcro, and it will just be hanging there, and I won't do any damage to my chocolate. Okay, so we're going to dip our balloon to whatever depth we want in our chocolate, and then coming up out of the chocolate, we're going to bounce it slightly, and that will remove all but the chocolate that we want remaining on the balloon. It'll have a little tail to it, and if that bothers us, you can kind of reach up here with your finger. And diminish it. We're going to come over here and attach it to the Velcro tab under the table. And let it just hang there to set. Another example of using things that were never intended to be chocolate molds to get various shapes that you want is using PVC pipe or any kind of plastic pipe to create cylinders and rods that you can use in your piece, incorporate into your piece, whether for just like hidden support functions, if you want to just prop something up to get it up into eye's view, or actually make it into a design element of your piece. This stuff is dirt cheap. You can get it at Home Depot for a few bucks for 6 foot long piece and chop it up. We actually have several pieces of various diameters, as you see here, lying around the kitchen, so you're welcome to use that. If you want something that we don't have, then it's a minor investment. There's a little bit of a technique to using this stuff, so let me just show how this goes. You begin the process by creating a plastic plug that a chocolate plug that you'll use to close off one of the ends of the pipe. And basically you're just going to take a square of parchment paper and put a big gob of tempered chocolate on that parchment and just set it aside for a few minutes. You want to let this set to the point where it's kind of clay-like in consistency. In other words, you can take your finger and easily create an indentation in it, but it's no longer liquid. Now hang tight for a second. Let's just finish. The main secret to using a piece of PVC pipe is that you do not seal off the end of it and then pour the chocolate into the top. You really can't do that without trapping a lot of air in with the falling chocolate. The falling chocolate is going to go in there and fill up the tube all right, but there'll be air pockets, and when you get the tube out, when you get the cylinder of chocolate out of the tube, you'll find that there are all kinds of cavities and gaps where air was trapped. So basically the things have to be filled from the bottom in the way I'm about to show you. You don't do that until your chocolate plug is about to this sort of clay-like consistency. So it's kind of a soft set. And when it gets to that point, then you can proceed with the filling. You're going to have to use a pastry bag, one of the disposable bags. Load that up with your chocolate. Enough to fill the tube. You'll have to make your best guess. What we're going to do is, instead of filling the tube from the top, we're going to fill it from the bottom using the pastry bag.